Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine you're an archaeologist today. You're kind of grappling with this explosion of brand new data, right? Stuff from modern digs, precise, digital, often high-tech.
Right. Super detailed.
But then you've got this massive archive of past research, decades, maybe centuries of it.
Legacy data. Absolutely crucial stuff.
Exactly. Published reports, catalogs, books, packed with illustrations, maps, old photos, sometimes even hand-drawn notes. It's a gold mine.
It really is. But it's also, let's say, inconsistent, scattered. It's a real challenge to mesh that with the new data cleanly.
And that's the core problem, isn't it? How do you bring those two worlds together, the super standardized new stuff and this huge, rich, but kind of messy archive?
Yeah, combining them is absolutely essential if you want to build the big picture, to make really robust interpretations that cover large areas or long time spans.
And traditionally, pulling info from those old publications, it's just a manual slog, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You're squinting at drawings, trying to figure out scales that aren't always clear, measuring things by hand or with basic drawing tools.
Dealing with different drawing styles from different eras?
Exactly. It's incredibly slow, and it really limits the scale of what you can analyze dramatically.
Plus that manual process.
Yeah,
It must introduce errors, right? Or inconsistencies.
for sure. Trying to standardize something seemingly simple, like, say, the width and length of a graze or the orientation of an artifact. Doing that across hundreds of publications, where everyone might have measured slightly differently or not even said how they measured,
Yeah.
it makes those large-scale objective comparisons really, really difficult. And there's the known issue of inter-observer error. Different people just get slightly different results doing it manually.
So you've got this mountain of valuable PDFs, basically, and you're wishing for a way to just zap them into a clean, consistent data set.
Pretty much. And that's exactly where the solution we're looking at today comes in. It's an AI-assisted workflow, and the software is called Audarchs.
Audarch, okay.
And it's designed specifically for this problem, creating uniform archaeological data sets straight from those varied published sources, like PDF catalogs. The idea is to do it much faster and more consistently than doing it all by hand.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is clear. We need to understand what Audarch is, how it uses AI, how it tackles these specific archaeological data headaches, and, well, what it could mean for the future of the field. Could it unlock insights we've missed?
That's the plan. Where should we start? The data problem itself.
Yeah, let's flesh that out a bit more. This data deluge, we're collecting more than ever, but you're saying the old stuff, the legacy data, is still vital.
Indispensable, really. New digs give fantastic detail on specific spots, but the legacy publications provide the broader context, comparisons across regions, long-term trends.
Right.
They hold invaluable info on the size, shape, context of finds, all crucial for understanding technology, change over time, cultural patterns. But getting at it systematically is the bottleneck.
You mentioned using images from publications for things like shape analysis of artifacts. That sounds particularly tricky with old drawings or photos.
Oh, it is, extremely. If you wanted to do, say, geometric morphometrics, that's a quantitative way to analyze shapes using old publication images. The setup was just brutal.
How so?
You'd have to manually pull out each image, figure out its scale, rotate it correctly if it was skewed, maybe clean up noise. These pre-processing steps, so time-consuming, they basically capped your sample size.
So instead of analyzing hundreds or thousands, you're stuck with dozens.
Exactly, which really limits the statistical power of your analysis.
And even simpler things, like just getting basic length or width measurements or figuring out which way is north on an old site plan.
Total nightmare, sometimes. Different archaeologists measured things differently. Standards change. Sometimes there isn't even a north arrow, or it's ambiguous. Standardizing that manually across many sources is incredibly laborious and, frankly, prone to subjective calls.
Okay, so the knowledge is there, locked away. The old keys are slow, manual, inconsistent. Enter Arc.
Right. Think of it like an intelligent assistant, specifically trained to read archaeological publications. It's a workflow and a software tool designed to automate the really tedious parts of turning those images and drawings into structured, usable data.
And its main job is, what, scan PDFs, find things?
Basically, yes. It takes a bunch of unsorted PDF files, processes the images inside them, automatically detects specific types of archaeological objects, and then extracts key data about those objects.
What kind of objects can it find?
The sources list quite a few common ones it's trained on. Graves, naturally, but also skeletons within them, ceramics, ornaments, stone tools, maps, crucial things like north arrows and scale bars.
Okay, finding the object.
So, at its core, it's using computer vision AI techniques that let computers see and interpret images. It employs specific AI models, like neural networks, trained for tasks like object detection.
Which means it draws a box around, say, a grave or a scale bar on the page.
Exactly. It identifies where these things are. But crucially, it's also designed to understand relationships between them.
How so?
It links things together. So it connects the box around a grave drawing to the nearest scale bar on that page and the nearest north arrow, and also to any skeletons or artifacts found inside that grave's box.
Ah, I see. So it knows this scale applies to this grave.
Precisely. That linking provides the archaeological context. It's fundamental.
Okay, so it finds and links things. Then how does it get the actual measurements or directions?
It has different modules for different tasks. For scale bars, it uses image processing to find the actual line, and then it uses optical character recognition, OCR, to read the text next to it.
Like 1 meter, 50 centimeter.
Exactly. It reads the number and the unit. And with that information, it can automatically calculate the real-world size of anything measured in pixels in that drawing.
Okay, that's pretty neat, reading the scale bar automatically. What about north arrows?
For north arrows, it uses another AI model to analyze the arrow's shape and orientation to figure out its angle relative to the top of the page. This gives you a precise numerical direction.
So you get an exact angle for a grave or a building plan or whatever.
Right. And for the objects themselves, like the outline of a grave pit or maybe an arrowhead,
Yeah.
it extracts the object's outline using contour detection algorithms. Once it has that precise outline, it can automatically calculate geometrics area, maximum length, width, overall rotation, things you need for shape analysis.
And skeletons, you mentioned it detects those too.
Yes, and it goes a step further. It uses another model to classify the skeleton's pose within the grave, like is it lying flat on its back, supine?
Yeah.
Is it curled up, flexed? Or is the pose unclear? So it captures posture and orientation data too.
Wow, that sounds incredibly automated. But you stressed it's AI assisted, not fully automated. Where does the human come in?
Ah, yes. This is absolutely critical. The AI does the first pass, the heavy lifting, scanning, detecting, proposing measurements, but human validation is built right into the workflow.
How does that work?
There's a graphical user interface, a GUI, where the archaeologist reviews everything the AI did.
So they check the AI's homework, basically.
You could put it that way, yeah. Did the AI find the right grave boundary? Did it pick the correct scale if maybe there were 2 on the page? Did it read the 50 centimeters correctly? Is the box around the artifact accurate?
And the user can fix things.
Easily. With a few clicks, they can adjust bounding boxes, confirm the detected outlines are good, maybe nudge the north arrow angle slightly if it's a bit off, or correct the skeleton pose if the AI misclassified it.
What if the AI completely missed something or got it badly wrong, or if the drawing is just really weird?
The software allows for manual overrides. You can redraw a contour yourself or manually define a box. It's designed as a loop. AI proposes, human reviews, corrects if needed. So that final list of processed graves, with all their data, that still needs a final check by an expert before you'd use it for serious analysis. It's a collaboration between the human and the AI.
Right. It guides the work, speeds it up, makes it consistent, but doesn't completely replace the expert eye. Okay, sounds promising. Did they actually test this on real archaeological questions?
They did, yes. The sources detail specific case studies they used to put autarch through its paces.
Those tests.
2 main ones highlighted were 3rd millennium BCE graves from Central Europe, and then final Neolithic early Bronze Age arrowheads from Northwest Europe.
Okay, why those 2 specifically? What makes them good tests?
Well, the grave data from that period in Central Europe is famously messy. Lots of different excavation and publication standards over the years, different drawing styles, cultural groups defined in slightly different ways. Getting consistent data out is a known headache.
Makes sense. And the arrowheads.
Arrowheads are a classic for studying shape change over time and space using geometric morphometrics. But again, you're pulling data from diverse sources, photos, line drawings, varying quality. So it tests the system's ability to handle different visual inputs for shape analysis.
And what about the data they used to train the AI in the first place? Did they feed it perfect examples?
No, and that's important. They trained the object detection models on a data set they created by manually marking objects, graves, scales, skeletons, etc., on 391 pages from actual archaeological catalogs.
And these were varied.
Very. They included modern digital illustrations, but also scans from old books, even scanned hand-drawn field notes. Training the AI on this kind of real-world messy data is key to making it robust enough to handle the variability it will encounter in actual legacy publications.
Okay, so they built it, trained it on realistic stuff, tested it on challenging cases. Let's get to the results. What did they actually find? What are the key archaeological takeaways?
Right, this is where it gets really interesting. For the graves, Audarch was successful in extracting the data and allowing visualization of things like grave orientation using radial plots.
Did it just confirm what archaeologists already knew, or did it offer new perspectives?
A bit of both, actually. It did confirm expected differences in skeleton orientation between burials traditionally labeled corded ware and bell beaker at the sites they looked at. You know, the classic east-west versus north-south patterns.
Okay.
But crucially, Audarch quantified these orientations directly from the drawings with a level of precision that's really hard to achieve consistently by hand or from just reading summary descriptions.
So, better data validating existing ideas. Was there anything unexpected?
Yes, and this is potentially quite significant. They used the precise grave outlines extracted by Audarch. Then they applied quantitative shape analysis methods.
Ways to mathematically compare shapes.
Exactly. And when they compared the corded ware and bell beaker graves from these sites based on the shape of the actual grave pit,
Yeah.
they found no statistically discernible difference.
Whoa, hang on. So the bodies were placed differently, east-west versus north-south, but the holes they were buried in were essentially the same shape.
According to this analysis, based on consistently extracted data from a decent sample size, yes, that's what the grave outlines suggest.
What does that imply?
Well, it lends support to ideas about a shared underlying burial tradition, maybe a single grave burial ritual that was common to both groups, despite the very distinct differences in body treatment. It's a data-driven insight derived from standardized measurements across many examples that could really help refine how we think about these cultural labels and burial practices.
That feels like a potentially big deal for how archaeologists interpret these periods.
It really could be. It demonstrates the potential to move beyond classifications based on maybe subjective observations or just a few key traits towards analyses grounded in large-scale, consistently measured data. Data pulled from sources that were previously just too time-consuming or inconsistent to standardize effectively. You can start building sort of scientific maps of cultural traits based on this kind of objective data.
Fascinating. Okay, what about the arrowheads? What did that test show?
The arrowhead study primarily demonstrated Audarch's versatility. It showed it could successfully extract the outlines needed for shape analysis from a large sample, and importantly, it worked on both photographs and illustrations of different qualities.
That's key, right, because publications use both.
Absolutely. And the analysis of those extracted shapes, it basically replicated known patterns, the strong geographical and chronological patterning in arrowhead forms across Northwest Europe that other studies had found.
So it validated the method, showed it could produce reliable data for that kind of analysis.
Exactly. It confirmed Audarch could provide the necessary input data for established quantitative shape analysis, even when dealing with diverse image types from publications.
Now, the sources mentioned there's other software out there for analyzing artifact shapes. How is Audarch different? What's its unique contribution?
That's a really important point they make. Yes, other powerful tools exist, but some might need very specific inputs, like detailed 3D scans, which aren't always available, especially for older finds, and are costly to generate en masse. Others might work with 2D images, but perhaps assume the artifacts were drawn following very specific conventions, maybe to highlight certain technological features. Audarch's big advantage, as highlighted in the sources, is its ability to automatically find, extract, scale, and orient the pictures of pretty much any archaeological material it's trained on, not just specific types, not just drawings done in one particular style.
So it's more general, handles more types of input images.
Yes. It handles the heterogeneity of legacy publications better. It automates that first crucial step of identifying and preparing the visual data from diverse sources, which many other specialized analysis tools might require you to do manually beforehand. This makes it uniquely suited for enabling those big comparative syntheses using legacy data.
Okay, so it unlocks a much broader slice of the published visual record for these advanced quantitative analyses.
That's the idea. It tackles the bottleneck of getting the data out of the publications in a usable format.
Now, this sounds incredibly useful, but we keep coming back to the AI-assisted part. There's still manual checking involved. How does the overall efficiency stack up against just doing everything manually? Did they measure that?
They did evaluate this, they looked at the effort involved, and yes, the automation isn't perfect. The AI needed correction. Sometimes the example mentioned was maybe around 3 corrections per grave on average in one test case.
Okay.
But even with that necessary manual validation step, the authors found that the guided workflow, where the AI does the initial detection and measurement, was significantly more productive. And importantly, it led to much more consistent data compared to purely manual methods.
Did they have people actually try both methods, like a user study?
Yes, exactly. They ran a user study comparing archaeologists using AutoArc versus using standard drawing software like Inkscape to extract the same kind of data manually.
And the result?
Users were significantly faster with AutoArc, and they made fewer errors. Plus, and this is a big practical point, they anticipate the efficiency gain gets even bigger with larger projects. Why? Because the sheer fatigue of manually measuring hundreds or thousands of items is drastically reduced when the AI handles the initial grunt work, and the human role shifts more toward review and validation.
So faster, more consistent, fewer errors, and probably less likely to cause burnout on big projects. Sounds like a strong argument. How accessible is this tool? Can archaeologists actually get their hands on it?
That's another plus point mentioned. AutoArc is being released as open source software.
Meaning it's free to use and modify.
Yes, under a GPL license. The code itself is available for anyone to use, look at, and even build upon.
Where would someone find it?
The source code is hosted on GitHub. And for easier download and to help with reproducible research, they've put the software package and some process data examples on Zenodo. They can't share the original copyrighted PDFs they used, obviously, but the tool and examples of what it produces are out there. It's set up to run using Docker, which is a way to package software so it runs reliably on different computers. They do give some hardware recommendations. You'll likely want decent disk space, a good amount of RAM, and ideally a dedicated graphics card, a GPU. The AI calculations run much faster on a GPU.
Okay, so it's a real working tool people can download and use, not just a concept. What about limitations, and where do they see this going in the future?
Sure. Current limitations mentioned include things like it's not yet fully optimized for dealing with really warped photographs, where the perspective is distorted. And as we've discussed, that manual validation step is still essential for ensuring reliable results.
Makes sense. And future directions, what's next?
Lots of exciting potential mentioned. One idea is deploying AutoArc on a server, maybe with a web interface. That would make it much easier for teams of researchers to collaborate on analyzing large publications or archives together. They also plan to expand the types of objects it can recognize and analyze. Think beyond graves and arrowheads to things like building plans, plant remains, or animal bones, ecofacts, different pottery types, metal tools.
Wow.
And crucially, maybe even train it to analyze unpublished hand drawings that currently only exist in physical archives.
That could be huge, bringing unpublished archive material into the digital analysis realm.
Absolutely transformative potential there.
Mhm.
Another major avenue is integrating natural language processing, NLP.
To read the text.
Exactly, to automatically pull information from the text descriptions that accompany the images in publications. Imagine combining the visual data from a drawing with textual data about its chronology, cultural attribution, or material, all extracted automatically.
So you could cross-reference, see if the text matches the image data.
Yeah, precisely. Or just combine both for much richer analyses. They also mentioned exploring newer, potentially more powerful AI models and hardware as they become available, aiming to further improve accuracy and maybe reduce the need for manual correction over time.
Okay, let's try and sum this up. AutoArc seems like a really significant step in tackling that huge problem of legacy data in archaeology, making those vast, messy archives more usable for large-scale objective science.
I think that's fair. It cleverly blends AI for the speed and initial processing with essential human expertise for validation and interpretation. The result is a workflow that appears much faster, more consistent, and less error-prone than the old manual ways.
And it's not just about speed, right? It's about enabling new kinds of analysis.
Right.
Doing quantitative work, like that grave shape analysis, at a scale that just wasn't feasible before because of the time and consistency issues.
Exactly. It helps unlock the potential hidden in data that's been sitting on shelves or in PDFs for decades. It could shift the bottleneck away from manual data extraction towards more time spent on actual interpretation and discovery, empowering researchers to ask bigger questions.
That really is a powerful thought. And it makes you wonder, think about applying this kind of AI-assisted approach to other fields with huge unstructured archives. History, biology, art history. Any field with vast amounts of visual or textual legacy data, what other buried knowledge, what patterns or connections might be waiting to be uncovered simply because no one's had the tools to process the information at scale until now?